the results of niching for a specific man online and how to stop being needy and get your needs met. We'll see you right after this. G'day and welcome to The Tinder Project, the podcast where a straight Aussie man attempts to survive 365 days dating online as an American woman. I'm your host, Mark Rosenfeld, Australia's dating coach for women. I'm here with my sidekick, self-love coach, Teal Elisabeth, and together we have one mission: to make meeting good men fun and easy for you. Let's give it a whirl. Teal.
Hey Mark, how are you doing this week?
We're both recovering by the look of it. I'm a little better. I have some use of my diaphragm back, which is great. I feel like I can talk to you a little bit more. I was talking a lot yesterday and I was sore. By the end of the day. But I've realized, Teal, there's levels of soreness now. There's soreness 3 weeks after surgery and, spend the day talking. There's the soreness 1 week after surgery. There's the soreness 1 day after surgery, and then there's the soreness before you even had the surgery. So on the grand scale, things are looking bright if we take it all in consideration. Yeah, no, I'm feeling good. Sam's been very supportive. I'm still not allowed to pick up Lainey. She's almost 20 pounds now, my little beautiful daughter.
God.
So, yeah, she's growing, but I'm not allowed to handle her because of incision risks and stuff for at least another few weeks. But other than that, I'm recovering. I'm enjoying my new kind of healthy diet. That's going to go well. I'm excited once I'm allowed to get back in the gym and I have lost about, Teal, this is sad, about 25 pounds of muscle.
Really?
Yeah.
I was noticing.
Breaks my heart a little bit, Teal, I'm not going to lie.
I was noticing you looked a little more thin, but I just figured, that's...
You didn't want to say it because you knew it would have hurt me.
Well, if you haven't, they starved you for a week in the hospital.
I didn't eat for 8 days, that's true. I wasn't even hungry. But no, it's true. So I'm down about 25, so I think I'm going to have a little bit of a before and after fitness project once this is all over, Teal, and take my photos and do the whole transformation thing. Because I've always wanted to do that, but I've kind of always gone to the gym reasonably consistently, so I've never had I'm in really bad shape now, so I should take my before photos, but this is like, I'm going to be starting really from scratch here. No muscle, I'm very weak, at least I feel very weak, and yeah, so I'm going to do that. So that'll be a little thing in the future that I'll keep you up to date on.
Yeah. Well,
how are you? You're looking very bright today. Are you well?
Thank you. I am feeling so much better. Yes. It's just, it feels like I'm coming back to myself again.
You're coming back to yourself right before you add to your family in a few weeks.
Right before I give birth, I know, but no, it feels really good. It's the power of rest. It's underrated. It is so underrated, but it is just a good reminder to all of us just how important rest is. It really works.
You and I have both been slowing down the past couple of weeks, and we're both a lot better for it. So, lesson for all. Lesson learned that we need to take as well.
But I'm actually really excited to hear about your results. I know you've been doing a lot behind the scenes. I was a little concerned. I was like, wow, are you niching in too much? I remember from the last few episodes, you're like, I'm going to cut out this, I'm going to cut out that. They need to want to get married in the next year. They want to have kids. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
We niched pretty hard, and I'm still niching on a new website now, so I'll tell you about that in a second. But the niching was cut off at day 17 or 19. We sort of did a day when I went to surgery. So that was about where things stopped. So I only have essentially 17 days of data. And keep in mind, and this has been a consistent trend throughout the year, that the first 5 to 7 days don't really produce any results, especially the first 5 days. Nothing really happens in those 5 days. It's a little bit like, I suppose it's a little bit like going on a diet, where the diet takes a bit longer, but those first few days, nothing changes. You're doing all the work and nothing has changed yet. Overall, here's kind of the numbers-based results. So from the 17 days, we got, let me open up my trusty notes here. We actually got quite a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dates. And we would have got 2 more, except for the guys were basically saying, hey, I just want to make sure that you're a real person. Are you okay to send me a verified selfie? And I did not have Sam available at the time to do that.
Wow.
So we dropped 2 dates, which we would have had if we were a real person. So it was essentially 11, was that 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 11 dates. Yeah, 11 in 17 days, which is a lot. Now, here's what I will say, though. this was, and for those listening who might not know what we've been doing by niching or who maybe missed the previous episode, as Teal was alluding to, we basically set up a profile which says, essentially, here's what I'm looking for. We want to be married within the next 12 months, and I believe starting a family as well. Starting a family the next, I think it was starting a family in the next 12 months. It was. I want to transition to being a stay-at-home mum when that happens. And I'm looking, there was a third big one. I'm looking for someone.
I have a relationship coach.
I have a relationship coach. That was the third one. So just don't judge me if that was not quite as big as the other two. But don't judge me for having a relationship coach. So we got 11 dates. Again, only 9 happened because of the selfie verification thing that I couldn't do. But essentially 11 dates. So that's pretty incredible because really we had 17 days. But as I said, only 12 of those were productive. Now, here's the caveat. The numbers sound really, really good. The big caveat is I wasn't filtering a ton after. I just wanted to see which guys I could get through. So if we were to grade the guys from A, B, C, or D, like A is like, wow, it's a stunning guy. B is like, it's a pretty attractive guy, seems pretty good. C is, not really, not horrible, probably a good person, but not great. And D is like, oh my God, that is like horrible, either very unattractive, ugly, dare I say, or, just awful profile. We were allowing through the A's, the B's, and the C's. So I often have a saying that the magic happens with the B's and the C's, but the C's are, there's also a big difference between a C plus and a C minus, and I was having fun with my clients deciding what was what. So anyway, yes, we had 11 dates. The good side, lots of dates, really lots. And the ones that were coming through, they were answering the questions. So basically the way we did it, they had to meet the things we just said, those things, and then they had to answer a question about their health, as in what health and fitness regime they did. And then they had to answer a question about whether or not they loved their work. Basically, how much do you love your work on a scale of 1 to 10? So they answered 2 more compatibility questions in the chat, and then they exchanged the phone number. So these guys had gone through the ringer, basically, and they still wanted a date. So that's the good news, is in terms of like relationship skills, in terms of the effort they put in, the conversational quality, it was really high. In terms of the attractiveness, we had, of those 11, there were 1, 2, 3, there was 1 A, 3 B's, and the rest were C's. So in terms of attractiveness, it was weighted towards the C's. But if you don't count the C's, that still gives us 4 dates in 11 or 12 days, not counting the first 5, with B's or an A. And that, even without the C's, if we say 4 dates in 17 days, given how filtered they were, I think it's pretty good.
I will say, that is really good.
Yeah. And I didn't even mention this. Sorry, were you about to say something?
No, I just say very impressive.
I didn't mention this. This was on, oh my God, I cannot believe this. This was on Plenty of Fish.
Oh, good on Plenty of Fish. Yeah.
So this website looks like it was built in 1995 and hasn't been updated since. And it acts like it. I got so many web page errors, messages not sent. It became a running joke in my client community how bad the technology was. But despite that, and despite the fact it was Plenty of Fish, and if online's dating is messy, Plenty of Fish is like a bloody hoarder's house or something. It is the next level of mess. But despite that, we did filter through 4 decent dates. And I would say each day we were reading probably between 12 and 15 messages to do this. So if you do the math, 12 to 15 per day times about 17 days, we probably filtered about 250 guys to get those 4. So those were just people who were messaging us. Anyway, I think all of that said, I think it went quite well. So 4 dates, I was happy with that. We're going to move it over to one more website, which is not a typically used website, and then we're going mainstream to see if it works mainstream. I really just wanted to see if it could work in theory, and I'm going to test on one more website. That website is OkCupid. If you've ever had the pleasure of using OkCupid, it is a very open-minded website. You can sort of tell it's a very politically left-leaning website. There's lots of, I'm pro-choice, I'm very open, and there's lots of that open-minded language on there. Nothing wrong with that. Love that for some people, but it does steer that way. So I'm testing it on there. We're going to see what the response rate is, how many A's, B's, C's, and D's we get. And then from there, we'll hit up Bumble and Hinge and see if we can perhaps even equal or beat the numbers with a very niche strategy. compared to what we were doing, which was more of a, hey, let's meet people and be open-minded strategy. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's cool. I think it might have some meat to it. So that's
you
where we're
have
at.
so many creative ideas for testing all these different realms of dating, right?
I know.
That's what makes the whole Tinder Project such a cool podcast to be a part of, because we get to learn through this whole experience that you get to go on.
And this is very different. You know, this niching strategy is definitely the biggest change we've made. Even just the questions, we've gone from a much more, I guess you'd call it classically feminine energy strategy, where we're letting the guy lead the conversation and ask the questions first. This is like, we match, you're out if you don't answer the question or don't fit the compatibilities. And then even if you make it through those filters, you have to answer two, you don't have to, but you're asked to answer two compatibility questions about your health and your work. And obviously you can change those. It doesn't have to be about health and work, but those are the two we're using. And then if you make it through those two, then you get our phone number and you get to call us. So it's sort of this intricate mix. Instead of going full leaning back feminine energy, it's like we're coming forward with the questions and the compatibility, but still leaning back and letting the guy make the move and organize the date and move things forward. So it's a good mix, and I'm excited to see how it goes. I think some of my professional clients might really like it because it feels it's a little bit more possibly time efficient. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in the long run is yet to be determined.
Well, I think that's a really good segue into our conversation this week about your needs and how do we communicate our needs without being needy. But I think also what we were talking about before this is also, how do we make sure we're not swinging the other way and just kind of coming at it too strong and being like, these are all my needs, you better stand up to it, you better show me you can hit it, otherwise it's not even a chance. Because I think both directions actually can blow up in your face. Would you agree?
I agree, and I'm really curious to get your mindset on this, because you and I both have clients that have gone in both directions. They put their needs aside, and then maybe it swings the other way for a little bit, and they get really empowered. These are all my needs, you know. I was talking to a guy, and he said, actually, this was through a client of mine. She met this guy, and she said she was talking to him, and she kind of passed it on. He said, tell your coach this. And my client, who's now in a relationship with him, he was telling her that the women he had been meeting before her, some of them were showing up. He had this happen many times, where they show up with a list and like, here's all my needs, can you meet them or not? And we're talking first, second date, like a literal list. I mean, it's California, so sometimes these things happen down there, but a literal list, like, here's my needs. And my client didn't do that. She showed up, she knows what her needs are, but she showed up with feminine energy. She showed up with her spirit, with her open heart, and essentially won him over with that. And her needs are being met, but she didn't have to write a blooming list of them and give it to him in advance. So yeah, I've seen it go both ways. I'm really curious, what's your thoughts on this? How do you think about neediness versus having healthy needs, not pushing it too far? Let's start with general advice. What's your general thoughts on this?
Yeah. Well, I just want to, my heart goes out to all the ladies out there who are trying to navigate this world of needs, because let's face it, we're not modeled this. Most of the time, our families are not showing us how to do this in a healthy way. Yeah. Relationships out there, society, movies, all that stuff. It's just there's no real good, healthy model for that. So it can feel very tricky. And so it's very natural to either be like, okay, I don't want to be too needy, so let me push them down, or let me communicate them. Everyone tells me, communicate your needs, let me communicate them, and then we scare them away. So there is a fine balance, and it does take some skill to figure out how to do that. I think the biggest thing when it comes to neediness is when we are not feeling whole and complete in ourselves. That's the best way I can internalize it and articulate it. When we feel like we are feeling needy, it's because we don't feel like we can fully support our own self, and we're looking outside of ourselves to complete us and make us feel good and validated and supported and safe within us. And so we'll look to people and say, I need you to do this. I need to hear from you X amount of times a week. I need you to be, showing me and telling me all these things, because deep down, I don't feel fully secure in myself. So when we are thinking about needs are important, but it has to be done from the right energetic set point first, which always comes back down to the self-love piece first, right? How do you feel on your own when you don't have a partner around? Do you feel like you can be whole and complete in yourself without having anybody fulfill any needs for you? But then that also can be a tricky point because you're like, yes, I feel secure in myself, but when I get into a relationship, how do I navigate that? I want to make sure that they're respecting me. I want to make sure that I'm not just taking breadcrumbs, right? So that's why we sometimes swing too far and come up with the list and show it to them and say, here's all my needs. So then the next part of it is going, okay, how do I know what my needs are? Articulate that list for myself so that I know what these things are that make me feel secure inside of a relationship container, right? We've already created the safety in your own self container, but now it's a relationship container. And using those needs instead of projecting that out onto a man that he has to kind of mold and contortion to fit all of your requirements, instead almost making it a place of what are your non-negotiables that allow you to just be able to show up in your authentic strength. So when I'm saying that, it comes through kind of like you were saying with your client. She didn't come out and say all the needs, but they were internalized within herself that made her feel very grounded and very strong in who she was. And she was able to show up with that energy of feeling safe and secure in herself. And then she can just kind of gut check as he comes forward and decide, is he able to match what makes me feel safe? And I think that's kind of the difference between the neediness versus the having needs and how we actually hold them and use them. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Okay. There's parts of what you said that I really agree with and parts that I disagree with.
Cool. Let's hear your thoughts.
Here's a question I have for you on that. Should a human being be able to feel whole and full and secure within themselves if they don't have any form of connection, in your opinion?
Whole and complete and full within themselves without any human connection?
Yeah.
Are you talking about relationship connection or just any, like...
I was more thinking any. I was more thinking any, like island model.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think humans are naturally relational beings. We need connection to feel like our happiest self. I do agree on that for sure. I don't think humans want to be in a vacuum, but there's a difference between looking to humans to make us feel complete versus being complete in the presence of humans.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that because
What's your take on it? Let's hear about your ideas of neediness versus having needs.
The more I do this work, I don't really believe human beings are designed to feel good in a vacuum on an island, as you would put it. I think we have, let's say we don't have an intimate partner, I think we certainly have the ability to fill our bucket, so to speak, from other connections. Let's call it friends or family or the people you help at the homeless shelter down the road. We certainly can have multiple taps feeding the bucket. But I don't think there's any biological or sort of emotional precedent for us to be able to feel good just on our own in a vacuum. Or if we do, it takes a lot of work and a lot of... that just feels like independence culture to me. Like if I was to say, for example, I need Sam to feel good, as in she's one of the people that meets my needs, and if she and my family were to leave my life, I could just feel good without them. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that's independence culture, and it's this idea that, well, I want someone, but I don't need them. I love saying that, as I used to, but really I don't think it's true, because for me to say I want people but don't need them, human beings are too relational. I think we do need validation from others. I think we do need love, connection, affection, whatever the emotion is. We do need that sense of, I have people around, and while yes, we can survive without it, and we can eat, and we have money, so technically we can continue existing on the planet without those things. I really don't believe human beings can thrive without the connection, validation. In other words, I don't think we can feel 100% without other human beings filling our buckets.
See, I think that's a dangerous place to live.
Why is that? Let's go into this.
Because if that's your mentality, then you're always outsourcing some of your happiness to other people. And that can feel very unsafe. To me, this is about building a deeper connection with our own relationship to self.
I would say it's only unsafe if the other people cannot be trusted to show up.
Yeah. But it's still outsourcing to someone else that, yes, you may trust them, but everybody has their own ways of being and their own agendas and their own life paths. And then there's uncircumstanced things that happen that we don't want to think about, So I agree with what you're saying 100%. Like, life is richer with human connection. Life allows us to love and express our love in a deeper, richer way when we have something to reciprocate that. But to me, it's actually about deepening a connection with a higher power, a higher faith, a depth within our soul that brings us that feeling of full connection and oneness, outside of looking for that from external sources. And that's a very Buddhist approach too, I think. That is a very, and I like Buddhism. I really enjoy it. You asked the question, what's needs versus neediness? I take a little bit of a different approach to this. I actually think it's in the eyes of the receiver. Because, let's be honest, none of us like being needy. We get this question a lot, you and I. How do I not be needy? And the reason we ask that question is because usually we felt needy in the past to someone we love. We have had some sort of thing that we wanted from someone and then put it out there and got this look or this hesitancy or this kind of pause from the other person, or maybe they even told us we were needy and we were too much. So, in my experience, neediness does not come from the needs themselves. For example, if I have a need for validation, if I have a need for connection, if I have a need for love, whatever that need is, I'm going to call it a need for now, not a want. I'll explain that in a second. Let's say I want it from you. If you feel pressure to give me the need, let's say it's validation. You feel pressure to validate me. You feel pressure to love me. You feel pressure to show up for me. Whatever the thing is, when you deep down don't really want to, then there becomes this conflict within you. You go, oh, Mark has this need, but deep down, I don't really want to do that. So now there's this awkward pressure on you where you feel obligated. Do I want to do that or do I not? And I'll pick up on the fact that you feel obligated. It'll be a subtle facial expression. It'll be hesitancy, pause from you, whatever it is. But if you really enjoy meeting that need for me, let's say it's validation. If you really enjoy validating that I did a great job on whatever, a podcast, if you really enjoy giving me a hug, then I will likely not pick up that I'm needy to you, because there'll be no hesitancy in you doing that. Like, let's say I say to you, hey Teal, right now, if you're open to it, I could just use a hug. Could I get a hug from you, Teal? If you are totally open and aligned to giving me a hug, it's very unlikely that I will feel needy. I may feel it because someone else in my past made me feel needy, but if we just take the bubble of you and I in an interaction, if I ask it respecting your freedom and your autonomy, and I say, look, if it's something you're open to, you don't have to, I'm totally fine if you don't, but a hug would mean so much to me right now. You are totally aligned, you give me a hug, I get my hug, so I get my need for connection met. And I don't feel needy because you didn't give me an awkward look or some sort of weird pause. On the other hand, if I said, hey Teal, I really need you to just text me every hour and tell me that I'm really good at podcasting, you would probably go like, and then I would feel needy. So in my experience, what I talk about with clients is really needs are not neediness, Neediness is actually not up to you. It comes down to the receiver and whether or not they perceive that the need you're asking for is an obligation or a choice. If it is a choice, if they genuinely have their freedom and autonomy to do the thing you would like them to do, then they will very rarely, if ever, make you feel needy. On the other hand, if they perceive that what you're asking for does not come with an option for them to opt out, does not come for an option for them to have their freedom and autonomy, then you will likely be perceived as needy. And we've all been babies, we've all had parents, and we've all had needs that at some point our parents went, oh fuck, not again, oh god, this kid, really, this as well? So every single human being alive has had a parent who's had a weak moment,
felt obligated to meet the child's needs instead of voluntarily wanting to, and gave that subtle look that made the child feel needy. So this is why I think we're all predisposed to being worried about feeling needy, because we've all been needy kids who basically obligated our parents at some stage, even if our parents are amazing. And then we grow up and we don't learn the difference between asking something for something where they can choose not to do the thing versus asking for something and the person feeling obligated to do it. And so that's my difference between needs and neediness. A need is the emotional thing that you present. So it could be connection, validation, love, affection. Those are the needs. Neediness comes in how the person receives it. Do they feel obligated? Like they don't have a choice to do the thing you want them to? Oh God, I got to text this woman every day. She's so needy. Notice I've got to text this woman every day. Not, oh, I want to text this woman every day. It's, oh God, now I have to. Versus, oh, I have the choice here. And with that choice and that freedom, I don't believe any neediness will ever be perceived.
Mm-hmm. So now I think
agree or disagree?
I think we're getting into semantics now.
Really?
Yeah, because I think the way I would interpret that, I agree with what you're saying. I think what I would interpret that to be is having needs is more of standards of how you want someone to operate, being in your life and relating to them so that you guys can have a somewhat healthy relationship. Whereas neediness to me still comes from a place of a lack that you're looking someone else to fill. That to me is not something we're wanting to put on anybody. And it doesn't matter how they interpret it or how you interpret it. If it's not something that you're feeling you can give to yourself and you're needing it from somebody else, that to me shows that there's room for your growth to strengthen within you. If you need a hug and you're wanting a hug, that's more of, I have a standard for, I need connection in my life. And
that's because you lack connection. At this time, I need a hug because I'm lacking connection, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So isn't that a lack?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know. It's a tricky subject this time. I don't want to lose our listeners here because it can be really confusing and complicated.
Sorry, listeners. Please, I've enjoyed this conversation. Stick with me. Taylor's too.
I really do think that neediness is more of the negative piece, and having needs is more like having standards. If you have standards, there's ways of operating. Like, okay, this is a great example. I have a girlfriend. She is a horrible texter, and she lives in another state, so I never get to talk to her. We never get to connect very often. We see each other maybe once a year. And I want to connect with her. I feel a need in our relationship that it's reciprocal and that there's room for connection there outside of just seeing each other in person. And I had to tell her the other day, hey, you know what? It doesn't feel good to me when I don't hear from you and I text you multiple times throughout the week and the month and you never respond. I feel like I'm not a priority. I feel like you don't value, this friendship. And so to me, that was me communicating a standard for the container of our relationship, that she could decide if she wanted to meet that need. We could call it a need or we could call it a standard, right? But it wasn't coming from a place of, I need to hear from you. I miss you. What's wrong with you? Why won't you, I'm not worth enough to you. To me, that would be the neediness that's seeking validation in me. I didn't need validation. I didn't need her to necessarily be anything for me. I was just articulating that this is a standard I have for how I like to relate to people. And if this is not something that you think you can do, I don't know if I want to continue to relate to you as much. But it's
I don't agree with you here. I see what you mean about it being semantics, but I do think the semantics are important, because if you lack connection with a friend and you feel sad because of that lack of connection, I think it's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling sad due to our lack of connection. It would really mean a lot to me if we could do a call once a month. And then the person's either going to say, hey, I can respond to your feelings, and they'll re-engage and they'll meet that need, which was lacking and will now be filled up. Or they will say, no, you're too needy, as in I don't want to do the thing and I don't have the capacity to give to you, and they'll withdraw from the friendship. But I guess I would...
That's not being needy.
That's what I mean. Neediness, in my opinion, has to be in the eyes of the perceiver, because you could get a guy that, let's say a woman says, hey, can you text me once a month since you're my boyfriend. Okay, let's take it really extreme. I just want my boyfriend to text me once a month, and he's like, oh, she's too needy. Versus you could get a guy who says, this girl wants to text me every minute. She's too needy. So it's a perception on what is my capacity. And if my capacity, if I can text my girlfriend once a month, which would obviously be very easy, below minimum, then really that shouldn't be perceived as needy by the average person. Only someone with a deep fear of loss of autonomy would feel that as neediness. But someone who's with a partner that wants them to text them every minute, that would, because autonomy is a need as well. So if you take away someone's autonomy through your need for connection, then you're basically trampling on their need for autonomy to get your own needs met. So I guess my difference in semantic here would be, maybe the Buddhist thing would say, okay, it's important in your personal growth to never need from another human and to fill that cup yourself. But I think to do that, if you look at babies growing up into adults, the only way we really learn to really fill our own cup is if we have many, many people, including trustworthy and attached parents, consistently over and over again show up for us. And a lot of the Buddhist teaching is 30, 50 years of trying to learn, hey, I can fill my own cup. But if you can imagine a baby that just never had a parent that showed up, never had a foster parent that showed up, never had a friend that showed up, that person would be so wounded. There is not any way ever their psychology could adapt to I'll just meet my own needs, unless they started to experience someone in real life who actually cared about them, who actually gave them a hug, who actually cared about them emotionally. I think what you're talking about is very, very advanced growth, and it's maybe possible if you've had a lot of people meet your needs. But I think it does encourage some of that independence culture, which is, well, I don't need anyone. I want people, but I don't need them. No, I'm sad. My friend hasn't contacted me. There is a lack there. It's not a self-worth lack, but there is a lack of connection in this relationship, which is making me sad. And to continue this friendship, yeah, I do need them to fill that. Or I do need some validation that I'm a good friend to them. Otherwise, I can't continue. The validation is lacking, so I do need that. And that's where I think the semantics do matter here. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, I do need that, but I'm not needy for having that. And I don't think
Correct.
her seeing that and judging it as needy, I don't think it's in the eyes of the beholder. I really do think it's asking yourself, is this coming from a place of me feeling fully inadequate in my own self, or is this just a standard that I have that I want to hold so that I can feel good in my relationships with other people?
If my let's say my marriage isn't going well, isn't it normal that I would feel a lack? You know, if Sam, let's say Sam just stops talking to me, I don't know, some trauma comes up for her, whatever, she just stops talking to me. And I'm like, Sam, I need connection from you. I'm starting to decrease because your husband is typically the number one person who would fill your connection bucket. Isn't it normal that I would feel a lack if Sam switches off to me?
Yes, but is that coming from a place of you not feeling good in you, or is that coming from a place of something that is just an experience and a standard for your container of this relationship?
I would say it's coming from a place of my marriage is one of the reasons I feel good about myself. But isn't that, are you saying that's I shouldn't have any of myself worth invested in the quality of my marriage?
I think it's dangerous when we're putting our happiness from our marriage as a main validator for our own happiness as a person.
Yeah, I just don't think you can opt out of human validation and connection. I guess
so listeners, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. Usually Mark and I agree on majority of subjects, so this is really, really good. I would love to hear in the comments, what is your take on needs, having needs, and neediness? Does it come from your own lack of self? Does it come from the eyes of the beholder of who you're asking needs from? Are needs important, and are they considered standards, or is it something different? What do we want to know from you? What you interpret?
Yeah, let us know, guys. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I'm glad. I've been looking for something that Teal and I disagree with, so it's good to find. I wanted to ask, because this is a kind of a separate thing, but needs versus wants. Do you have I've kind of a simple thing that I say to clients, and I'd be curious to hear yours. Do you have a simple way to differentiate the two?
Needs versus wants.
I can share mine if
let's have you go
respond
first
to that.
on this.
The simple thing I say to clients, tell me if you agree or disagree on this one. Needs, you may actually disagree because it's emotional. I would say the need is the emotional core, and it's usually defined by an emotional word. So it would be something like a need would be connection, validation, love, affection, power and control, autonomy. So it's sort of a core thing that would make it's like an emotional bucket. Whereas a want would be a way to meet the need. So for example, if a need is love, a want might be a nice card with lots of writing on it. Or it could be a touch or a massage or something like that. If the need is validation, then the want might be a promotion at work, or your partner telling you you're a great lover, saying those specific words. If the need is power or control, the want might be, my partner knows my favorite food and brings it home for me. So in a sense, we feel like, my partner really knows me, and they bring home this food even when I didn't ask for it. So essentially, the want is like a way to fill the bucket, and the need is the bucket itself. And I usually say to clients, perhaps you disagree, the need, as in the bucket itself, is a non-negotiable, as in feeling loved, feeling connected, feeling validated, feeling like you have some power in your life, feeling like you have some control in your life, feeling like you have a sense of autonomy. Those are the non-negotiables. But the wants, which is the ways to fill the bucket, those are wants. They give or take. So if your connection bucket is filled by daily texts, the daily text would be a want. You may have to settle instead for a twice weekly phone call instead of daily text. So it's different ways, but it still meets the love connection bucket. So that's my simple little visualization to help clients differentiate needs and wants. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I haven't dissected that to the depth that you have.
I think about this stuff too much, Teal. I've been in bed for 3 weeks. I'm like, what do I think about that topic?
For me, I think, again, it's figuring out for yourself, what are your non-negotiables? I call it the magical box of safety. The things that allow you to feel fully safe inside of your heart space, knowing that you have this almost protective shield of your values, your standards. Yeah. And that's those things: honesty, integrity, respect, trust. Those are the things that make you feel safe in you, so that you can fully open up with the people that have proven that they can honor those qualities. And for the people that you're not sure if they can honor those qualities, that's when you have to really be a little bit more careful about how much you're giving, how much you're sharing your love, and being that open-hearted person, so that you're not setting yourself up for failure or disappointment or hurt. But in terms of, yes, how those values are demonstrated, that's up to each person to deliver that in a way that feels authentic in their own personality and style. And if we start to impose, this is how you have to show me this standard and need, then we are putting way too much control on that person, and it doesn't allow things to flow.
Yeah, and I would say that's where it starts to feel needy, because if you say, you have to write me a love note, and the person really struggles with love notes, maybe they're not very, very good at that, but they are, what's their love language? They are more of an acts of service person. They might find the request needy because they struggle to do the love note when they really want to, I don't know, buy you flowers or do whatever the thing is. Doesn't mean you can't ask for a love note, and I believe you should, but there may be cases where someone can't or struggles with that particular way to fill the need, and maybe the love note then becomes more of a want. I mean, it depends how much you value love notes, of course, but maybe the love note becomes more of a want, and the love itself remains the need, which you get through a slightly different means. And just quickly, Teal, you've spoken about this in the past, I think, where I remember you saying Spencer's really good at loving me in certain ways, but words were not one of his strengths, and so you had to kind of make that a want. You knew he loved you, so your bucket was being filled, but you had to kind of make the was it love notes or words? Something became more of a want until later on he kind of learned to speak that language a little bit more. And you couldn't just be like, if he doesn't do it this way immediately, I'm breaking up with him. You still felt love in a Spencer-esque particular way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that's where it can get really dangerous too, because their needs can very easily start to form expectations. If someone is feeling like they're wanting to give to you in the ways that you're telling them, I need this, I need you to text me every day, and then you start building that as an expectation. If he doesn't text me every day, then I don't feel good about myself. Then we're building up this container where, this person's going to end up building resentment. So we have to be very, very careful about not letting expectations creep in as we are expressing what our needs are.
Yeah, and I would add to that, respecting the person's autonomy if they can't do the specific thing, the want or need that you're asking for. And this is really hard because you want your partner to be able to show up and meet your wants and your needs in turn, but maybe there is something in particular that for whatever reason they just can't do. And if you ask your partner for 10 wants or needs and they meet 7 of them and they respectfully say, for the other 3, no, I can't do that, babe. Would you be open to working through it in a different way? It's not fair for you to just break up with them and say, well, you're not doing what I want you to do. Everything's a deal breaker. There has to be a time where your wants, not your needs, but your wants can be negotiated. Because I don't think you should ever be negotiated out of feeling loved. But if you want your partner to, I don't know, always be home at a certain time because that makes you feel loved, or always text you at a certain time because that makes you feel loved, or always take you to a date in a certain place and maybe even mind read what that place is, that makes you feel loved. That's where you have to be willing to hear a no, because if you can't do that, you can't respect your partner's autonomy, and that's where I think you will be perceived as needy. When your partner doesn't feel, as a man especially, I can speak to this, when we don't feel like we have the option to say no, when our autonomy is gone, that is where we will really start to perceive you as needy. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a balance between you give us the window and the opportunity to say no, while also understanding, as your partner, we can't just say no to everything and opt out of your needs. And you've got to make that, I would say to the listeners, you've got to make that decision. Okay, is this person saying no too much to the point where my core needs are going unmet? Or are they saying no a healthy amount to the point where they still have their autonomy? And I may be a little disappointed, but I'm not being perceived as needy.
I think that's a really good way to wrap this up and take away
Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate you.
Messily talked about there. Yes.
All over the shop there. That was fun. Guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want an appointment one-on-one, you can meet with the beautiful Teal. She is available via the link in the description.
It's been fun. We'll talk again next week.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.